Have you lost your job? Have you lost a loved one? Are you exhausted caring for your parents, for your kids? Well, you can find immediate relief when you read Sheila Mack's new #1 bestseller, Bootstraps and Bra Straps. It contains the Boots formula to move from rock bottom back into action in any situation, especially right now. If life has knocked you down, pick yourself up with Bootstraps and Bra Straps. Get your copy at www.sheilamack.com today.
Are you ready for a reboot? Welcome to the Sheila Mack Show, reality at its finest. History reminds us those hit hardest often become the change makers. This year, we've all hit crazy economic, social, and emotional rock bottoms. We all get knocked down. Something hits globally, locally, personally. It affects our health, finances, our relationships. We have to recreate a business or career. Each show, Sheila and her special guest will be sharing their reboot stories, guiding you with real solutions to upgrade and up-level emotionally, mentally, physically, spiritually, and financially. Here on NBC's KCAA Radio, Mondays at 1 and Wednesdays at 7 p.m. Pacific Time. If you're ready to pull yourself up by the bootstraps and bra straps, enjoy a listen. Here's Sheila. Are you ready for a reboot? Welcome to the Sheila Mack Show, reality at its finest. History reminds us those hit hardest often become the change makers. This year, we've all hit crazy economic, social, and emotional rock bottoms. We all get knocked down. Something hits globally, locally, personally. It affects our health, finances, our relationships. We have to recreate a business or career. Each show, Sheila and her special guest will be sharing their reboot stories, guiding you with real solutions to upgrade and up-level emotionally, mentally, physically, spiritually, and financially. Here on NBC's KCAA Radio, Mondays at 1 and Wednesdays at 7 p.m. Pacific Time. If you're ready to pull yourself up by the bootstraps and bra straps, enjoy a listen. Here's Sheila.
Welcome to the Sheila Mack Show, reality at its finest. Here we have real people sharing real stories and actionable steps to help you reinvent, reboot, and rebuild your life on your terms. I'm Sheila Mack, your host, and today we have Dr. Sarabeth Berk as our special guest. She is a hybrid professional who also researches hybrid professional identity. She's an author, TEDx speaker, and was recognized by Colorado Inno as one of 50 Inno on Fire recipients, people who are doing incredibly innovative work. Sarabeth calls herself a creative disruptor because she blends her artist, researcher, educator, designer identities to lead and create innovation strategies that radically connect resources and people in new ways. After Sarabeth underwent her own professional identity crisis, she learned she was a hybrid, and that concept revolutionized her career path. So she obtained her PhD in curriculum studies and teaching from the University of Denver and has degrees from the School of Art of the Art Institute of Chicago and Rhode Island School of Design. Wow, you've done it all. Welcome to the show, Sarabeth.
Yeah, it sounds like I've done a lot when you read it out like that. Nice to be here. Thank you.
Yes, and so this show is based on my new book, Bootstraps and Bra Straps, the formula to go from rock bottom back into action in any situation. And this year, our entire world has had so many situations.
Just a couple.
Yes. So I would love to hear and have you share with the audience about how maybe you overcame a tough situation in your business or personal life.
Yeah. By the way, I love the title of your book. It just really got me when I saw that. And I mean, as I mentioned, you just read in my bio, where my business started was from a professional identity crisis. I hit a point in my career where I didn't know who I was anymore. I didn't know how to answer that really age-old question, what do you do? And so I felt lost and confused because I was teaching at the time and I felt like I was stuck in this box. I wanted to do so much more for the world. I wanted to be a leader and a transformer, but people just saw me as a teacher. And I was like, how do I change and be the person, fully realize the career and identity I want to have? And that led me on a journey to go get my PhD, which turned out to be a really reflective time because I didn't want to introduce myself as a student. I was back in school, but I wasn't a teacher and I just didn't know how to introduce myself. And what I learned is that people are more than their job titles. A job title is just a name that's been given to you, but who you are is so much more than that. And I started to look at myself and realized I have at least 4 really important primary identities that are being an artist and this educator and a designer. And I needed to show up in my work using those.
Mm-hmm.
But when you list them out like that, you just sound like a lot of things, a lot of different things, and it's confusing, like how do those fit together? So my crisis turned into this epiphany that people can be hybrids. You can be a combination of identities and no one's giving us permission. So that was my big revelation aha, which I turned into a book, and now that's what I'm consulting and coaching and speaking about, because I think this message is so much bigger than what I learned. Many people are feeling the same pain point, and the workforce is becoming a hybrid workforce, and we're just not talking about it. So that's a little of my crisis turned, lemons to lemonade.
When I think about how on point that is, because as a mom, let's just say I have 6 kids, 3 I adopted, 3 are mine. So I have all these kids and I was running businesses and I wore every single hat in running those businesses. And
I bet you did.
Home and I'm wearing the mom hat and doing all the things the mom does. And so we are, as a humanity, capable of doing so much more than fitting in a little box.
Exactly. And I hear this from so many people. They're like, I can only be seen as one thing. I don't know how to let society see me as everything that I am. And I'm like, but you can. You have to figure out how to articulate that hybridity, and that's the game changer.
Yes, I love that. And it's something, it's almost like staying in that one box.
Yeah.
You're hiding your talents, your truths, and your skills that you could contribute, whether you're running your own business or working at a company. They might not know that someone in the engineering department could lead the safety team or whatever. Now, I started at JPL at 18 and I was doing programming for the money. It wasn't my best job, but I did it for 3 years and I ended up teaching safety and leading courses. That was like me. I can program. I just don't like it that much. And so you're kind of guided, but they learned about it kind of the hard way. Somebody didn't show up for the meeting and I said, I got it. I can do it. No problem. And half the words I couldn't pronounce. So everybody was laughing. Nobody fell asleep. It was awesome. And we got our safety check done for the month. And every month we had to do a new one. So with
awesome.
The safety. So it's funny how that shows up. Ask your employees or people on your team, people you're working with, to share about their other talents. It's not a dirty little secret to have more talents to contribute.
So true.
Yes, it makes all the sense. So
I think we forget to talk to people about their identity. And typically I think work gets thought about in terms of your passion and purpose, what you're good at and what you love to do. But we forget to ask people, what do you call yourself when you're doing that? Like, who are you? And no one realizes they get to name themselves.
Mm-hmm.
They can invent how they want to be seen in the world.
I love that. That is so true. Now, I'd love to hear a little bit about your journey getting a PhD. Were you still working at the same time?
Oh, yes. I was doing it all, right? I mean, so I was working full-time running this creativity entrepreneurship program, and my background was all in art and art education. And I never heard the word entrepreneurship. That was like foreign concept to people in art schools. And so it was my first dabble in being in business and learning how to start an idea and take it into a company. And I got really intrigued. And so I was doing my full-time PhD studies at night and going really deep into theory and all this academic literature. But I was also getting really inspired by the entrepreneurial spirit because people are action takers and they just go after stuff and they solve problems. And that's what I wanted to do in education. I wanted to be this innovator who created whole new ways of learning and changed the whole way that schools looked. So what I found is I was an entrepreneur and never knew it because I didn't have the words or the mentorship.
So then you're going in to create differences in workplaces as well as for people and students somehow.
It's just evolved. I mean, when I trace back and, hindsight is 2020,
Yeah.
This has been my true me the whole time. So my hybrid title is creative disruptor. That's what I call myself when I'm blending my identities of being this artist and educator and researcher together. But I thought I could only show up as one identity at a time. So I would find a job and be like, oh, this job's about teaching or research. But then the other parts of me would be feeling absent and missed. I would want to bring the creativity back in or whatever. So I was gravitating to jobs that had a hybridness in them that allowed me to use different abilities. But I didn't have the language to know that's what was happening or that I was looking for jobs like that. And so eventually, as my talents needed to show up more and I was gravitating to roles that were hybrid roles, and I finally realized I'm this hybrid professional, everything clicked. And so with the research and kind of coming up with this term of being a hybrid professional, it made everything make sense. It showed that my whole background was positioned around that interconnection and integration. And then what I've realized as a hybrid professional, I needed to share this with the world. Other people needed to know this knowledge and awareness and have permission to be their fullest self as well. So I both work in hybrid jobs as a hybrid sometimes, changing things, innovating, doing all that creative work. But now I'm writing and sharing this message because other people really are getting so much value from the coaching and the message I'm sharing.
Yes, and I'd love to learn about your coaching programs and how you go about helping someone who's working on creating an identity.
Yeah, so I've got a book and a workbook, and the book is really the revelation of what is a hybrid professional, how do they operate, what are the things that make them tick? Because a hybrid is different than an expert or a generalist. I just want to state that. So we need all those different types of people in the workforce. But when someone is an expert, they really just have one identity. They're really good at one thing. And people that are generalists get a lot of names like you're in the gig economy or you're multi-talented or you're a polymath. Those are people with many identities. I call that multiplicity. So the hybrids are people that are somewhere in between being an expert in a lot of things or having many identities, but they're connecting, they're intersecting those identities. They're working from the intersections. So the book explains all of this and helps you understand your hybridity. But then people say, well, how do I find it? How do I become a hybrid? And that's my workbook. So the workbook has 5 steps, and it really begins with a lot of self-reflection because you have to know who you are. What are your professional identities? That's the first question. And then I walk you through and say, who are you in the intersections of those identities? Because that's where the hybridity emerges. And people start to scratch their head and they're like, I like that question, but I've never been asked it before. I don't even know where to begin. And so I give some guidance and tools. And then eventually I take people to owning it and inventing their hybrid title and learning how to introduce themselves as a hybrid. Because there's a lot of confidence that you walk into a room and say, I'm Sarabeth, I'm a hybrid, I'm this creative disruptor. What do you do? And they're like, whoa, I've never heard this. This is amazing. So it really starts to open doors. The transformation I've seen for people, usually when they're in some kind of career transition or just struggling to define themselves, they go from feeling kind of clueless and confused to feeling so empowered and so clear and articulate. So it's really a process of giving people those tools. And I do that through an online course. I also offer coaching, and I do some webinars and different interviews like this too.
That's wonderful. So what I think is for those listeners who are in a point where they are transitioning, maybe they have to go back to the workforce because their partner or spouse now it has their job cut in half, or
Right.
maybe they're just re-entering because the kids are grown, whatever the situation may be. Maybe you thought that you had this dependable job and the whole business is gone now because of COVID. So this is a great time to use a book like this and programs like Sarabeth offers where you're able to redefine who you are, especially if you maybe took a couple years off to do other things like family, which a lot of us have to do sometimes.
Yeah.
And to be able to get into the right position is when you're able to define your hybrid title in a way that people are looking for exactly that. I know I've had many employees, I've had gift stores and running businesses for forever since I was very young. I started at 23. I would have loved to have something where I could really get to know. I know I do the DISC test and some other tests, but to get to know who the person is applying, what they can actually bring to the table.
Thank you. I mean, you hit the nail on the head. I think this idea of defining who you are is just as important as finding your strengths finders and your other skills in your work. Because when you show up for an interview and people say, tell us about what you do and what you're good at, and you just start to sound generic. If you're like, I'm good at coaching and marketing and sales, your hybridity is your differentiator. It really is that unique value that you bring. So if you haven't done the work to reflect on what am I good at and how do I express that as my identity, then you don't really stand out. So this is a process of redefining yourself and also finding your value.
Yes. And so I think that's really important. I remember one young girl, she signed up as a cashier at the store. And I was like, okay, great. Really, nice young girl. She was going to college and working, and she did an okay job. She was kind of shy, which is interesting because she wanted to be the cashier. And one day, one of the ladies that does all the design work in the store, they redesigned the little vignettes and this and that. She called out sick. And what happened was Andrea, the cashier, she said, do you mind if I help out with the displays? Because it's a little slow right now. I think it was summer, a slow season for gift stores. And I said, sure, go for it. The worst thing is I have it fixed tomorrow, have fun. And it was the best displays I have ever seen. Like I'm talking something you'd see on Rodeo Drive. It was gorgeous. And I was like, whoa, no wonder. And she's not great with the people, but so she became the main person designing things in the store and using her artistic talents that she was keeping her little secret because she had applied for the cashier job.
That's a great story.
And that happens all the time. Yeah. And here, as somebody running a business, I'm like desperately looking for people to do things. And when they have a talent for it, that's like gold. And Absolutely. They could be doing 2 or 3 things. My other example is my sales manager. See, now I had over 100 students come through my store. I worked with the government and created a job training program for at-risk youth. So they emancipated from foster care and they would work with me. Nobody wanted to hire them. And they would do a 6-month training program. So I needed a manager. I found her at Nordstrom's. We became friends. And then I found out she had a background as a social worker.
Oh, wow.
So she could sell things too. And I was like, you have the job as the manager of this store, because the heart of the store was those kids and that open source learning environment. Everything else was just having fun. And so I was able to buy a whole bunch I bought the other 5, buildings in California with the proceeds from the store. So when you're in your talent, your truth, and you're giving back, the blessings will show up. And one of the things I did very young, I started out with, I needed everybody on board. And even the kids that came to me, everybody, I was like, what can you do? And we'd have these breakfast meetings and we would talk about creativity and how to make more money and we'd split the profits. And we just had a blast, and everybody was able to go outside of their little box.
Yeah, more than their job title.
Yeah,
right there.
Way more than their job title. And many of those kids, now this was a long time ago because I have kids that are in college and above now. So it was a long time ago when I was 23. And, those kids that went through my program, I still know most of them today. A lot of them have their own companies, or they work and they're in creative industries doing what they love. So it does make a difference.
Those are great stories. I love how you showed up and talked about, being a manager and having a social work background and working with kids. It all intertwines, and it's the relationships between those different identities where your true identity emerges. And that's where it gets really interesting. But to shed light on that, that's the gift. It's like you have to be able to find that about yourself.
Yes. And I mean, this can go into your book and what you're doing can go into so many other areas of life when you think about it. Relationships, sometimes people are dating and they show up as what they think the other person wants to see. Oh, you like to hike. I like to hike too. And, I don't like to hike. No, I'm sorry. But, whatever it is, and they're not being honest.
Yeah.
They're hiding in the box they think they're supposed to fit in for a relationship. Then they end up with that person as a partner. And it's like, whoa, I can't do this fake thing or hide my talents and truth and hold my breath and not really exhale and live my truth fully. I can't do that kind of relationship because that's a lie. So,
exactly.
Yeah. So it's kind of a lie when you're going into a company. I mean, it's not a lie, but it is in a sense where you're not sharing who you really are.
No, I completely agree. I mean, in that relationship example, you end up leaving the relationship. You realize it's not the right fit. And when I talk to professionals that are really having this hybrid identity, but they're trying to be one role, they get frustrated with that job. They end up leaving it. And so when I meet them, they're like, I look like a job hopper. My background is all disconnected. I have this non-linear career path. What's wrong with me? And I go, nothing's wrong with you. You need to tell your hybridity as a story of your power and your value. That's what we have to figure out. And they're like, wow, it's an asset. Like this isn't a detriment. And so it's this huge relief for them.
Yes. And I mean, think about how that even works you work with schools too. Is that correct?
Yeah.
In the education, how does that work with education?
Yeah, I mean, I've worked with entrepreneurs and physical therapists and CEOs. I've worked with so many different people from different walks of life. And essentially, teachers are more than teachers. I mean, that's how I felt. They're like class managers and they're therapists and they're, creating content and they're doing so much more than just educating. And every teacher has their own hybrid sauce of how they make learning come to life and why students connect with them. And yet we just kind of dumb it down and say, oh, you're just a teacher. And so it's this facade. I really believe we just have stretched the reach of language, right? Like if I meet one more person that calls themselves a coach or a consultant, I'm like, tell me what type, define and decipher who you really are.
That's so true. I mean, I remember that was the question I never loved was, what do you do? And I was like, how long do you
I know.
When you're running businesses and running a family with 6 kids, it's like, when do you sleep is a better question.
I bet.
So, and then you get used to it. Now that my kids are grown, it's like, okay, I can't do nothing because I wouldn't even know. That would be hard for me. That would be torture. That is not something I can do. So everything else is, as long as I'm having fun, it's okay. And that was, it felt like, I want to know who you are.
Yeah.
And in my book, the first part, the Boots formula, B is for being. It's about who you're being and all you're doing, how you show up with your family, your friends, your clients, walking your puppies. Even if you have to clean your house, who are you being is so much more important than what you're doing at that moment.
Yeah. I talk in the book about identities being assigned to us. So when people tell you, you are the director of X or you're the head of blank, and you're just like, okay, that's my identity. But you can also create your own. And we forget that. In professional circles, we haven't really realized, even if you're in a formal company with a formal job title, you can still call yourself what you want to be known for. I would say I'm Sarabeth, I'm the director of blank program. And I call myself a creative disruptor because I'm changing all these experiences and developing all that. And people go, oh, I understand you so much more now because of your own way of describing yourself.
Yes. And I have somebody asked on our live here, are you in the real estate business, Sheila? And yes, as a matter of fact, isn't that funny? I started when I was 18. I bought a triplex.
Wow.
Lived in one of the units and I kept building and growing from there. And I have an incredible team that does real estate. I don't do all that. I don't do every piece of the real estate now. I teach an online course once a week for that. That's a piece of what I do, but it's not 100% all I do. I know real estate and investing like the back of my hand.
Wow.
I bought all those retail stores and I ended up with everybody in the shopping park was like, how did you do that? They're paying rent.
Right.
And in the end, when you retire or leave the retail business, I still have positive cash flow, passive income coming in. Those that the business shifted, they don't have that. They just had to close their store, and they paid the landlord for years. And of course, in some areas, New York and Beverly Hills, it's a little harder to like buy the building, but in many times, it's like my mortgage payment was the same as my rent.
Wow.
So it's really interesting. Yes, I can do that, and I can write a book, and I can have a show, and I can do all these things because that's just who I am. I'm not just one person.
You are a hybrid.
Yeah, I am totally a hybrid. It's like, and I don't know how to not do that. I'm really good at what I do when I'm finding properties and getting, I get 40, 50% more income when I do investment properties and all this fun stuff. Yes, I know that. So I think it's giving ourselves permission to be okay with being more than just that little one thing, because nobody is one thing.
Yeah. It's a big deal to give people that permission. You'd be surprised when you just see that light bulb go off in them of like, I'm allowed, like it's okay. I don't have to hold back or contain myself. And it's a big deal for people.
Right. And it's like that thing that Marianne Williamson says, that actually, our greatest fear is, the poem, and I don't want to waste time and say the whole poem, but it, everybody listening probably knows this, and I'll put it in the comments. And that is why are we playing so small?
Yeah.
Even with our titles, our identity is everything. And when you change your identity, people say you have an identity crisis. So reinventing your life, that's a big part of my book. I have a whole chapter on reinventing your life, and it's really changing your identity. When people get a divorce, when they go through a loss of a loved one, when they have a career shift, many times because they're tied to wife, mom, or whatever that career was. I'm the manager at XYZ company, and I'm that company. Then they have an identity crisis.
Absolutely.
And that's it. So it's, guess what? You can just write a new identity. And this time, and that's the thing with my book, is also it's on your terms. This time you get to do it on your terms, not somebody else, not society's, what they want for you. It's your terms.
Yeah, I love that. It is on your terms. And it's also a really deep reckoning with yourself, because I think people don't actually take the time to sit and look at what have they done in their work. Not the titles they've had, but what have they done and how do they do it? Because hybrids typically invent new processes. They're really good at seeing patterns and themes that other people don't see. They just have unique qualities of working that they take for granted. They're just not paying attention to themselves. So I help people kind of turn on that light switch of consciousness and realize you have all these attributes, and you just need to name it something. It's been with you this whole time. Let's pull it forward so you finally realize it.
Yes, I love that. That's beautiful. So what advice would you have for someone who is having that identity crisis right now, or really wants to, is so tired of that what do you do question, wants to reinvent their title?
Yeah, my first question to people is, what are your professional identities? And what I notice is people can't typically answer that succinctly. They start listing a bunch of different things. Half the time it's things they don't even want to do or want to be anymore. So you need to focus on the professional identities you love and the ones that light you up and you enjoy the most. And I say, start with just naming that list. Then I say, narrow it down, because you have a core set. I call them your primary professional identities, the ones you use the most. They show up every day. The other ones are important, but they're not as frequently used. So when you look at your list, you narrow it down to your top 2 or 3, 4 at the most, that are those primary ones. For me, that's the artist, educator, researcher. And then I say, draw a Venn diagram. And you put those identities in the Venn diagram and you say, okay, who am I in the intersections? Now, that question is hard. So I say, there's other ways to answer it. You start thinking about how you feel. When you feel your best in your work, when you're in that flow and everything's easy and effortless, you're probably in a hybrid moment. And so if you can remember what you're doing in times when you feel your best, you can understand what's happening in your intersections. And then you look at like these new words that are coming up. For me, in my intersections, I was challenging things and I was being really creative and I was pushing the status quo. And I was like, oh, maybe a way to frame that is being a disruptor. Maybe that's what I'm doing in my intersections. And that's how I finally arrived at this creative disruptor title, to really acknowledge that's my true me. In every job I've had, I can go back and look and say, you know what, I was a creative disruptor when I was a teacher, and when I worked in the schools, and when I was working in this other program for the entrepreneurship stuff. It stayed with me. I just didn't know what to call it back then. So it was really a beautiful exercise, but a hard one. It was so much reflection. And it definitely helps to talk to other people, to get their perspective on what you do. So again, in the workbook, I have these 5 steps because it's a journey. Mm-hmm. It's a really beautiful process of peeling back these like beliefs and these old words and terms you've used about yourself to start to get to the deeper you and define it with a new set of language.
Beautiful. I love that. Yes. So, well, now during your journey to discover that, how many times did you maybe hit a wall, or where you went somewhere and you said, hey, I don't really want that position, or you had to leave because it just didn't fit anymore?
So you're asking where I crashed and burned.
Yes. Yeah. And how you got through that, because that's going to happen when you're discovering your identity, I believe.
Definitely. And just part of life and growing and changing. So even just in my last role, I pushed too hard. I was asking them, well, why are we doing it this way? And why can't we spend money this way? And have you thought about this or that? And they were like, you don't listen to the word no. And I was like, you're right, because innovators don't want, like, if they hear no, that's the challenge. So I'm going to find a different way to do it. And that wasn't a good fit. So, we had different visions for how the work should be done. And I think it never feels good to be told like this isn't the right time or the right job for you. But every time it's happened, because I've had it happen a couple times, it really makes me reassess my life, and a newer, better version always comes out. And it takes, months. I'd say it's a good year of that evolution of like grieving and letting go and not having resentment and going through the anger, all those steps, right, of grief. But when you start to come back to yourself again, you find like new parts. You just get in touch with yourself. And I realize like what I really value and what I really care about and what I really want instead. So it helps me have a new sense of possibility and opportunity and look for jobs that I wasn't looking for prior. So it's been a gift every time it's happened. But yeah, hitting those walls is a little bit traumatic sometimes.
Yes. And, I think what comes to me, there's 2 things. First of all, if you are looking to share your full talents, there's a fun way. I've never applied for a job in my life. I mean, like literally, I filled out the application after the fact. Many times I volunteered, and I would show up and get involved with something I believed in. And that way I get to do all my talents and truth, and they get to see who I am and how I show up. The next thing you know, they're like, hey, this is political week here in the United States. I literally ran campaigns, campaign manager. I won't say for who, what, or where, but there were some big titles there. And they asked me because they saw me volunteering. I was volunteering on a nonpartisan situation to have equal education for all people in the United States, no matter income, race, color, everything, all that. I wanted equal education for all. I didn't see that here. It's something I was really passionate about with all these kids. And so when I was doing that, they offered me positions to run campaigns. The first one was a friend, and the campaign manager wasn't working out, and I called out some issues. Next thing you know, I got the job. Wow. And it's so funny because they said, well, what political party are you in? I was so young back then when this all started that I said, Free Spirit. Because I was like, I knew nothing of politics. I knew people and leadership, and how to communicate and work with people. That was that I didn't even know what to call it. I was like, this is just, you see it, that's what it is. And I worked on many campaigns and had a blast and learned a lot about it. And then I said, well, no, I don't want to run for anything. I'd run for my life first, because that's a big position. I don't want to do all that.
Oh my gosh.
So that was my political time. But so just with your talents, if you know, as you're applying for jobs, remember also that you're applying and they're interviewing you, but you're also interviewing them.
Oh, definitely.
If it doesn't feel right, if it's not a good fit, okay, yeah, you want the money, but if you know it's not going to last, it's just like a relationship. It is a relationship. You spend more hours at work than at home most of the time. Think about it. Yeah. So why, listen to your gut with that. And when you're giving back in contribution, volunteering with things that you care about, that you love, then you get to share all your talents and people will see you. They may not be the company that you want to work for, but they may recommend you and give you a letter of recommendation based on who you are and how you're showing up. And that recommendation may surprise you because you don't even realize your own talents until you're just showing up having fun. Makes a big difference.
Your background is so varied. I love hearing these stories. And I agree again. I mean, I used to just do a lot of side projects because I was interested in other community work and things with children and community voice. And those became special projects on my resume to kind of demonstrate other facets of myself that wasn't showing up in my day job. And people saw how robust I was. And I also agree, when people are hybrids and they're applying for jobs and trying to express their hybridity, and people are like, how do I show an employer that? Because this terminology is still new and employers don't all understand what's a hybrid. But some will get it. Some, if you explain it to them how you have these different parts and that's your value add and that you integrate and that's why you should be hired, the employers that understand the importance of that hybridity are the right jobs for you. And ones that don't understand it, they're like, that makes no sense. You don't want to work for them anyway because they'll limit you. So I use that as a factor for people to understand that's a marker of fit or not too.
Right. Yes. And if you are this year thinking about changing careers or getting a side business, if you are a hybrid, like most of us really are, may be able to become an entrepreneur and do your own business. And have fun with that as a side business. I have a few people that I know that I've been working with that actually they got laid off based on the COVID because of whatever the company shut down. And so they started working on their talents and truths. Well, now they're making 3 times, 4 times more money than they were making at the job, and they're not going back.
No.
So it's just, it expanded. So this universal pause in some ways is a gift to reinvent yourself.
Completely. And work is changing into hybrid work. I mean, the word hybrid has suddenly become this popular word of hybrid learning, hybrid events, hybrid work. I'm like, everything's hybrid all of a sudden.
Yes. I mean, imagine a lot of us have kids at home and we have to work from home now. So now you've got to figure out homework, work life, home life, kids. Maybe you got a puppy, a cat, something else going on, and you've got to change the whole environment of how you're living and working. So that has been a challenge and a gift for many people this year.
Yeah, my dog's been nudging me during the interview. That's my challenge right now too.
Well, and you know what, our pets, I really think our pets are like us, because like my little puppy dog, I have a new puppy, and let me tell you, she's gone to board and train twice. And they said she just needs to come back in a couple months again.
Oh
and so she does not follow the rules or the rules so well. She's more of a leader. What can I say?
She takes after you.
She's like, I got this. What? You want me to do what?
Oh my gosh.
So, and she, but you know what the funny thing is, she is so loving.
Yeah.
And we are a very loving family. You know, I have 2 of my college kids home because the dorms closed. So now they're home, and we are a hugging, loving family. And so she's a hugger and a little love, yet she's, still kind of working out, dealing with all these rules. So,
Aren't we all?
isn't that interesting? So they do kind of take after us, and that's so fun. Well, I would love for those listening who are interested to learn more about how they can connect, maybe take your courses, get your book, and learn more about creating their new title.
Yeah, I would love to send people to my website, which is morethanmytitle.com. And that's the same for social media. And there's links there for resources. I've got some free downloads for a hybrid identity elevator pitch, a sample of my workbook. And then the book and the workbook are also on Amazon. But morethanmytitle.com is where you can find me.
All right. Thank you again for being a guest on the show. And we will be back after these messages. All right. We are back now, and if you are tuning in, this is the Sheila Mack Show, reality at its finest. Here we have real people sharing real stories and actionable steps to help you rebuild, reinvent, and reboot your business and personal life on your terms. I'm your host, Sheila Mack, and we are here today on NBC's KCAA Radio, the station that leaves no listener behind. Next, I'm going to share a short portion of my new best-selling book, Bootstraps and Bra Straps, the formula to go from rock bottom back into action in any situation. The book is available on Amazon, Audible, Kindle, and at www.sheilamack.com. The book also contains 14 free gifts plus chapter activities, and it is my birthday month. So this month, I will be also donating an additional gift and courses to women's shelters throughout the United States to help people that really need help to get back on track this year. So grab a copy and take a listen. Oh, I had to learn how to go from rock bottom to rock solid. I saw the patterns in all the times I've had to do that, and in how I've seen my friends and clients get through their rock bottom moments as well. Ultimately, I came up with the BOOTS formula, a simple yet powerful method of redirecting your thoughts and actions. The BOOTS formula will teach you the skills you need to quickly dissolve limiting beliefs and get back into action. In simple language, BOOTS will grab your problem by the bra straps and help you get back into action in any situation. Sound like something you can use? Let's take a look at each letter. B is for being. The first letter of the BOOTS formula is B, which stands for being. At one point in my life, I decided this is who I'm being in all that I'm doing. When shift has hit the fan, you realize this is messy, and you just have to roll up your sleeves. Maybe you have other people to help you, but maybe you don't. Either way, you have to be the one in command. You have to decide who you're being and what you're doing. Whether you're starting over or just hoping to make it through, you have to ask yourself, how am I going to show up through this? Who are you going to be as you're walking your puppies or cleaning up the mess? Who are you going to be while you're reorganizing your life and changing your living situation? If you're being who you really are, then you won't be in that bad situation for long. This first letter in the BOOTS formula, B for being, shows up in how you're speaking, having fun with family and friends, or helping a client. Who you choose to be while doing all the things you're required to do as you move from rock bottom back into action makes all the difference. But why is this so important? Because the way you show up and the energy that comes from you will help attract better things in your life. I know that sounds like magic, but it's happened to me time and again, as you'll see throughout this book. The opposite is true as well. If you show up with negative energy, you will attract worse things into your life. You notice that when you meet people who focus only on the negative, everything that comes out of their mouth is complaints, tragedy, and chaos. Somehow these things just happen to them, and this becomes a pattern.
those people are training their subconscious mind to look for the negatives to show up, so they don't even see the positives. But when we're able to retrain our minds to focus on the positives, we're able to enjoy more of life, even while we're rebuilding and rebooting. We're going to starve those negative thoughts, not feeding them with our attention, time, or energy. When you focus on the good parts of your life, those things that you can be grateful for in this moment, that energy will bring even more good things your way. Don't get me wrong. You still have to take the action steps to get out of the negative, and you're going to have times in your life when you're just going to have to do whatever's in front of you. It may not be the prettiest thing, but it doesn't matter. Sometimes, when you're focusing on getting out of a hole, it feels like you're buried in your own self-centric thinking. But when you get out of that mindset and put down your problem for a moment, it clears the way for a solution. One way to do this is to help someone less fortunate than you. Volunteering with your community, religious organization, school, or work, which allows you to fully show up, contribute, and utilize your unique talents. When you're using your flow, you're not thinking about the problem at hand. You're not showing up for approval. You're just being your best self. If you're showing up and being fully present, people will see your true essence and respond to that. Having that respite will open a floodgate of ideas and give you the resources to resolve any difficult situation you find yourself in. This first letter is a reminder to stay in your being and live your truth. It will help you stay grounded and centered when things are in a state of change and chaos. The truth is that there's often form, freedom, and order even in the center of a storm. The first O is for orientation. The next letter in the BOOTS formula stands for orientation. As you are living through your rock bottom moment, you need to know that it's not better than it is and it's not worse than it just is what it is. Assessing your current orientation is a really big action step in the BOOTS process. Discovering orientation is part of the overall change you may be in, and it will help you find some surprisingly simple solutions. In this case, we're referring to a place. Where do you find yourself on the map of your life? Within this stage, you'll also acknowledge where you were in the past and where you want to be. Once you know where here is, you can answer, how did I get here? And where do I want to go from here? Assessing your orientation also means considering your options and saying, I am here on the map, and I want to go over there. You need to know where you are in order to think about how to take the next step. If you want to go from California to New York, you first have to know you're starting from California. You then have to know that to get there, I can walk, I can swim, I can jog, I can take a flight, or I can take a bike. I can take a bus, or I can take a train. You use your rock bottom to set the direction for your life beyond this rock bottom situation. It's important that you are really honest about where you are in this situation. You can't lie because you don't want to give up your personal responsibility. You have to own every part of this and realize it could be worse. It could be better, but this is it. If you aren't able to be honest about where you're starting from, you won't be able to clearly see where you want to go or how to get there. If you're not realistic about that first point of orientation, it's almost impossible to get out of your rock bottom moment. At the very least, it will take a hell of a lot longer. A lot of people have a hard time accepting the truth of where they are. They might think, oh, I'm kind of here, but I wish I was there. No, this is where you are. This is where you're starting from. That may be where you want to go, but you won't get there if you don't know where you are on the map. The last piece of orientation is owning it. You are responsible for where you are now. The minute you start blaming people or situations outside of yourself, it was my mother's fault, my brother's fault, the weather's fault. Guess who's in control of your life? Everyone but you. When you own your situation, however, you're taking back your power. Damn, yes, I spent that money, or oops, I did trash the credit card, but I'm not going to blame Macy's or Nordstrom. I'm just going to have to do something different here. Nobody else gets to be in charge of your life. From here on, you own it. Once you've gone through the orientation process, you'll get a grounding sense of peace and clarity, and you'll be able to acknowledge just how far you've already traveled. Give yourself some credit. Admit that you may have messed up in one area, but also look at the good parts of where you are. Once you have to answer to, how the hell did this happen to me? Your next question is probably, how can I ever unravel this mess and get back into action? The next letter of Boots will help you answer that. The second O is for order of operations. The third step of the Boots formula is finding the order of operations. When you're in a rock bottom moment, there are certain steps you know you need to take to get out of it, and you need to complete those steps in a certain order, which will be different depending on what you're going through. Throughout the book, I'll show you these steps in other specific rock bottom situations. As you learn the steps for yourself, you'll become adept at facing any other rock bottom you may find yourself in. In the military, they train people to focus on one thing, find and execute the solution, then move on to the next thing and the next. If you complete tasks on the battlefield in the wrong order, you're not going to win. If you do steps in the wrong order in math, you're not going to get the solution. In algebra, you must follow an ordered set of actions to solve for x, and one step cannot be done without doing the prior calculations. The same is true here. It's very important to order your steps and then complete them in that order. Consider this step your Boots camp, a battle plan for accomplishing things in a certain order so the magic happens. Each step may take a bit of time, and there will be days when you feel as if nothing has transpired and you've seen absolutely no change. There's lag time while you're completing small tasks, organizing, setting things up, or whatever your steps may be. If you're trying to lose weight, you may think, I've been working on this diet for a month now. Why can't I get into these size 2 jeans? What the hell? Then, all of a sudden, if you're really clear on the goal and you're following the path with your order of operations, all the lag time catches up, you reach equilibrium between effort and results, and then boom, you're going downhill. It gets easier. You start to see results at a rapid pace. There's less to do, less chaos and stress, and you have some free time. As you get started figuring out the order of operations, it's important to know that everything is not going to happen on the very first day you apply it. It took you a while to get into the mess, so it may take time to get out. Once you start to follow the order of operations and you do the work, however, the universal law of momentum takes over and most people arrive at their desired outcome ahead of the expected time. Now, you're ready to write out important strategy steps that will help you, slowly at first, start taking small action steps each day toward your desired new outcome. And after you complete this strategy session, you will start on the journey to designing the life you choose. T is for thinking. The fourth step of the Boots formula is thinking. If you recall your thinking at the most successful points in your life, it's probably vastly different from your thinking when a crisis brings you to a rock bottom situation. Often, at the toughest times, our thinking goes to survival. we lose sight of the possibilities and opportunities that are before us. This is where thinking comes into play. It's vital to have a strong mindset in order to keep our boots on and walk out of a rough spot in life. Thinking leads you to a clear vision of where you want to go on that map of your desired outcome. You've made the decision that you're going to New York. Your bags are packed, you have an idea of how you're going to get there. You know the steps you need to take, though you may not know how the hell you're going to take them all, but you've made up your mind. That's where you're going. Tony Robbins often says, it's in the moment of decision that one's destiny is shaped. That decision is the thought that comes before the action steps required to reach your new goal. Everything happens in this step, in that decision. You can see it, feel it, embody it. Things start to show up because you're looking for them and you're open to them. You'll start getting the results you want just because that decision is in your mind. It becomes that real to you. Once you have that clear vision in your mind, you have to see yourself as if you already are living in your desired reality. You're just doing the steps to get there. S is for stepping up. The fifth and final step of the Boots formula is a literal step, stepping up. You've gone through the first 4 steps. You've decided how you're going to show up. You have a picture of where you're going. You know the steps you need to take, and you've made the decision to actually do something. It would be nice if you could just sit, think, and meditate your desired outcome into being. But that's not the way it works. There is some validity to the idea of manifesting what you want, but at the same time, you have to believe enough to actually go out there and take the risk. You have to overcome your fear of giving your first presentation, making your first speech, or writing your first book. You have to get out of your comfort zone, and you have to take those steps. S is for stepping up by taking the personal responsibility required for a real reboot. While the B in Boots is about being in the present with who you are in the situation, S is for taking those steps toward the future you want. Although there will be many times in life where we have little or no true personal responsibility for an event that alters our lives, it is always a gift to own your own response and reactions to situations.
And now I have some homework for you. I would love for you to grab a copy of my new best-selling book, Bootstraps and Bra Straps, the formula to go from rock bottom back into action in any situation. It is now available on Audible as well as on Amazon and Kindle and at www.sheilamac.com. I will be donating a book or course. If you look online, you'll see the courses I offer as well, to women's shelters across the United States and Canada whenever a course or book is purchased. So check it out, and I look forward to sharing more with you next time. As always, I wish you life, love, laughter, and light.
Have you lost your job? Have you lost a loved one? Are you exhausted caring for your parents, for your kids? Well, you can find immediate relief when you read Sheila Mac's new #1 bestseller, Bootstraps and Bra Straps. It contains the Boots formula to move from rock bottom back into action in any situation, especially right now. If life has knocked you down, pick yourself up with Bootstraps and Bra Straps. Get your copy at www.sheilamac.com today.